My heart sank the second my wife stepped through the door after her work trip to Vegas. Her smile was as radiant as always, but something felt off. A faint, mysterious bruise marked her neck. I fought to keep calm, but inside, anxiety churned relentlessly. She quickly tugged up her collar, murmuring in a quiet rush, "It's just a bug bite." Her words did nothing to ease my growing suspicion, amplified by memories of missed calls, forgotten promises to our daughter, and the way that younger coworker had casually draped his arm around her. A cold dread settled over me as one question echoed in my mind. Was this the beginning of the end I'd always feared? It all started the moment she left for her company retreat in Vegas. Every year she goes on this trip. Networking, seminars, corporate bonding. Normally I rearrange my schedule, tag along, and we make a family trip out of it. It's always been our thing, a little escape, a way to reconnect in the middle of our chaotic lives. But this year was different. Our 4-year-old daughter, who's always had trouble with travel, was going through a particularly rough patch with anxiety. She didn't want to go anywhere, not even to the airport. So, after a long conversation, my wife and I decided that I would stay back with her and my wife would go alone. We try to look at it practically. Her career is growing, she's making important connections, and skipping the retreat, though optional, would have been frowned upon. I didn't want to hold her back. She promised to keep in touch, and we even planned a special FaceTime birthday call for our daughter. She was supposed to sing, maybe even help blow out the candles virtually. Our daughter was so excited. She talked about it for days. But once she got to Vegas, things shifted. The first day, she was still herself, sending texts, checking in, even cracking a few jokes like she always does. But then it was like a switch flipped. Her replies got shorter, then slower. Sometimes nothing at all. I'd send texts with important updates, our daughter's nightmares, a fever scare, small things I needed her support with, and they'd be left unread. When I brought it up, she said she never saw them or she was too busy and forgot to reply. That wasn't like her. Worse, when we did manage to get on the phone, she'd rush through the conversation. She'd talk fast, then suddenly need to go. Our daughter would barely say hi before she was already saying goodbye. I tried to understand. Retreats can be intense, but she wasn't even calling during scheduled events. These were times when she was supposedly alone in her room or between things, and then came the birthday call. She backed out. She said people from her seminar came up to her room, that it was a networking opportunity she couldn't pass up. She asked if I could explain to our daughter that she couldn't make it. I told her I wouldn't. I told her she made a promise and needed to handle it herself. She tried to spin it, said I wasn't being supportive, that I was making her choose between her career and being a mom. But she'd already made that choice. And our daughter? She didn't understand. She waited for her mom with her party hat on and tears in her eyes when the call never came. Later, my wife promised a rain check, said she'd make it up the next day. That never happened either. Then there were the social media posts, pictures and videos from the retreat. Most were standard stuff, smiling coworkers, happy hours, panels. But one guy, some 23-year-old new hire, was in almost every post. He was practically glued to her side. One photo showed him with his arm draped casually around her shoulders. Too casual, too familiar. I remembered that guy. She'd told me about him. He was the new junior associate in her department, fresh out of college, awkward, struggling to fit in. My wife was assigned to oversee him, show him the ropes. She mentioned that once, after a late work project, he texted her saying she was exactly the kind of woman he needed to keep him in check. I'd raised an eyebrow back then. She brushed it off, said he was harmless. said she felt bad for him. But now, with every weird excuse, every missed call, every moment of distance, I couldn't stop replaying it all. By the time she came home with that faint, too familiar mark on her neck, I already knew. This wasn't just about a bruise, it was about everything that led up to it. And I couldn't shake the feeling that, whatever this was, it started long before she got on that plane. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I really did. For days after she got back, I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, just a tired dad who missed his wife too much, who took things too personally. But deep down, I knew something had changed between us, and it wasn't just in my head. The first night she was home, she went straight to shower and came out in a turtleneck. In March, in our heated home. I didn't say anything at first. I was still processing everything: her absence, the missed birthday call, the mark on her neck, the guy in those photos. But the turtleneck sealed it. She hadn't worn anything like that in months. And now it became her default. Indoors, outdoors, even to bed. She was hiding something. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask her about the bruise, she gave me that same calm but hurried tone. I told you already, it's a bug bite. Why do you keep bringing it up? I didn't push. Our daughter was in the next room, but my silence must have spoken louder than words. Later that night, after our daughter was asleep, I brought it up again. This time, directly. I think that's a hickey, I said. She froze. Just for a second. Then she rolled her eyes like I was being absurd. A hickey? Seriously? That's what you think of me? I didn't want to, I replied quietly. But what am I supposed to think? Her expression shifted from disbelief to anger. She said I was accusing her of cheating, that I was punishing her for missing our daughter's birthday, that I was just projecting my frustration. But it wasn't about that anymore, not just that. It was everything. Her coldness on the phone. That guy always at her side. The way she suddenly had excuses for everything. The way she wouldn't look me in the eye when I asked simple questions. The overcompensation, hugging me more, smothering our daughter with gifts and affection like she was trying to distract us from the truth. I told her straight, "You're acting like someone who's guilty." That's when she broke. Not into tears, no, she doesn't cry easily, but into fury. She said I was being insecure, that I didn't understand what it meant to be a working woman in a male-dominated environment, that I didn't trust her. She wasn't wrong about the challenges of her field. I've supported her through every late night, every promotion she chased, every retreat she attended. But this wasn't about her job. It was about our marriage, our trust. And I was watching it crack, one small lie at a time. The worst part? She never once said, "I understand why you feel this way." She never tried to reassure me, never invited me to look at the bruise closely, to calm me down. She just deflected, redirected, blamed, and then she went silent. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made pancakes for our daughter, kissed me on the cheek like it was any other day. But everything in me screamed that nothing was normal. That kiss wasn't warmth. It was cover. Damage control. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, watching her laugh with our daughter, dance around the kitchen, hum her favorite song, like she hadn't just shattered something between us. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But I also knew how easily people can smile while hiding the ugliest truths. Maybe it was just a bug bite. Maybe the guy in the photos was just a lost, awkward kid. Maybe I was overthinking. But if that were true, why did it feel like I'd already lost her? The more I tried to make sense of things, the more my thoughts kept circling back to something I had tried to ignore for years: her past. My wife doesn't talk much about her family, and I never forced her to. But early in our relationship, before we got married, she opened up to me during one of those late night conversations that only happen when two people think they'll be together forever. She told me her father cheated on her mother multiple times, that her childhood was marked by slammed doors, screaming matches, and long stretches of silence, that she watched her mom slowly lose herself trying to keep a marriage alive with a man who refused to stay loyal. And when her mom finally left, it wasn't out of strength. It was because there was nothing left to hold on to. She swore she would never be that kind of wife. She swore she would never be that kind of mother. And she swore that if she were ever tempted to hurt someone the way her dad hurt her mom, she would walk away before doing damage. But here we were, years later, married with a daughter of our own, and I couldn't help but feel that we were staring down the same kind of devastation she had once sworn to avoid. That night, as she tucked our daughter into bed and I watched from the hallway, I kept thinking, is this how it started for her mother too? Quiet suspicions, sudden distance, a bruise that no one wanted to explain. The irony was bitter. I wasn't just worried for myself. I was terrified for our daughter, because if what I feared was true, it meant our little girl would one day carry the same scars my wife had carried into our marriage, wounds you don't see, but that never quite heal. And yet, I still wasn't ready to confront the full truth. Part of me wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, that maybe, just maybe, I was letting my own insecurities spiral out of control. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly observing her since she came back, couldn't ignore the way she flinched when I asked where she'd been during certain times in Vegas, or how quickly she shut down every time I mentioned the coworker, or how she seemed to hover between guilt and defensiveness, never quite committing to either. She'd always been my best friend. We used to talk for hours about everything and nothing, but now there was a wall between us, built brick by brick with every vague answer, every sidestep, every forced smile. And the hardest part? I could feel myself changing too. I was becoming someone I didn't like. Checking her phone when she left it unattended, watching her movements too closely, reading into every sigh, every pause, every glance. I hated it. That wasn't who I was. That wasn't the kind of husband I wanted to be. But when trust begins to rot, suspicion fills the space it leaves behind. I remembered something she said once, years ago, when we were talking about fidelity. Cheating isn't just physical. It's emotional too. It's when you start hiding parts of yourself from the person you're supposed to be closest to. Those words echoed in my head as I sat alone that night, staring at the living room wall, while she slept soundly in the next room, wrapped in her turtleneck and silence. I didn't know if she had physically cheated. Maybe I'd never know. But something had shifted. She wasn't letting me in anymore. And in some ways, that felt like the biggest betrayal of all. I couldn't keep living like this, drowning in doubt, stuck in limbo between what I wanted to believe and what I couldn't ignore. Something had to give, and I knew it had to start with me. I didn't want to be the guy who snoops. I've always believed that if you have to go looking for evidence, something's already broken. But that belief feels very different when it's your marriage on the line, when the person you trust most is suddenly a stranger in your own home. So I started small. I remembered that coworker, the young guy who seemed to be everywhere during the retreat. I went back to the social media posts, not just hers, but also tagged photos from other coworkers. It didn't take long to find more of him, always by her side. One video in particular made my stomach twist. It was taken during one of the after-hour mixers. The camera pans across the room, and there she is, laughing, leaning in, His hand brushes her waist, and she doesn't pull away. It wasn't proof, but it felt like confirmation. I looked at the timestamps. Some of them were taken during the exact time she told me she was in bed early, tired from the day. I remembered texting her that night. No reply. She told me she fell asleep early. Clearly she didn't. I didn't confront her right away. I needed more. Not because I wanted to trap her, but because I needed to be sure. I needed to know if I was about to burn down our marriage over a misunderstanding or if I'd just been living inside a lie. I checked our phone bill. The number to that coworker popped up multiple times, often late at night. Some calls lasted over an hour. She'd never mentioned that. Ever. Still, I hesitated. What if they were just close friends? She's always been nurturing, especially to people who feel out of place. Maybe she was just being kind. Maybe I was overreading. But then I saw the hotel receipt. She left it on the kitchen counter one morning, half crumpled beneath a stack of mail. It wasn't the receipt itself. It was the room charge. There was a second room service order late at night for two. Champagne, dessert, something romantic. That was harder to explain away. I didn't ask, not yet, because suddenly I was scared. Scared that if I said it out loud, if I accused her, laid all the evidence out in front of her, we'd reach a point we couldn't return from. Right now, there was still a shred of hope, no matter how fragile. A possibility that maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But hope is a dangerous thing when it's built on denial. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went into her email while she was out shopping. The guilt was immediate, but it didn't stop me. And that's when I saw it. A draft, never sent, titled, "I messed up." Just 6 words in the body of the email. I can't stop thinking about that night. No name, no recipient, but I didn't need either. My hands were shaking when I closed the laptop. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I'd walked into a room where the walls were caving in. There it was. The truth I'd been dreading. The confirmation I thought I needed. But it didn't bring clarity. It didn't bring peace. It just hurt. Worse than anything I imagined. Because now I had to face the real question. What do I do with this truth? Do I confront her and risk tearing our daughter's world apart? Do I walk away quietly and carry this pain in silence? Or do I stay, swallow it down, and pretend for our family's sake that I never saw it? I had searched for the truth because I thought knowing would give me power. But now that I had it, I just felt powerless. I sat with the truth for 2 days. 2 long, suffocating days where every breath felt heavier than the last. I watched her move through the house like nothing had changed, laughing with our daughter, humming to herself while folding laundry, asking me if I wanted coffee like we were still the same couple we had always been. But we weren't. I wasn't. Because something inside me had broken, and once it breaks, you can't glue it back together with good intentions or morning kisses. On the 3rd night, I asked her to sit down. She looked surprised. Maybe she thought I'd let it go, that I'd buried the bruise, the silence, the messages, the room service, along with my self-respect. But I hadn't. I couldn't. I told her everything. Every single thing I'd seen, read, remembered. The photos, the late night calls, the draft email. The moment her face changed, I knew I wasn't wrong. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just went quiet. And then, finally, she whispered, "I made a mistake." Funny how such a simple sentence can carry the weight of an earthquake She said it wasn't planned, that it just happened, that she felt lonely, that I'd been emotionally unavailable leading up to the retreat, that she was overwhelmed, stressed, tired of being everything to everyone. I listened. I let her speak because part of me needed to understand how we ended up here, but understanding doesn't always mean forgiving. When she finished, I looked her in the eye and said, "You didn't just cheat on me. You lied to our daughter. You chose a moment over a promise. And I can't teach her that's what love looks like." Her eyes welled up. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. Not out of anger, but because I had already let go. I told her I needed space, real space, that I would be taking our daughter to stay with my sister for a while, that we'd figure out the logistics. But right now, I needed to protect our child from growing up in a house full of quiet resentment and unspoken pain. She cried then. Not for me, I think, but for herself, for the life she had broken, for the guilt she couldn't run from anymore. That night, I packed a small bag, scooped up our daughter, who thought we were going on a fun weekend trip, and left. As we drove through the dark, my little girl in the back seat humming a song about unicorns, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. Not relief, not peace, not yet, but clarity. I knew I was making the right choice. Not because I stopped loving my wife, but because I finally started loving myself again. And because I refused to let my daughter grow up watching her father shrink himself just to keep a cracked marriage standing. This wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the ending I needed. I don't know what the future holds, whether we'll co-parent peacefully, whether forgiveness will ever be possible, whether I'll ever trust again, but I do know this. I will show up for my daughter every day. I will choose truth, no matter how painful it is. And I will never, ever accept love that requires me to look away from betrayal. Because some things break you open just to show you what you're truly made of. And this heartbreak reminded me, I am still a father, I am still a man, and I still get to choose who I become next.